Two things have happened at once that signal a really rough road ahead for Trump. The first is an absolute brutal poll for him in the New York Times, showing him underwater on literally every single issue. He's at negative net 12 points overall, and negative 4 on immigration, which is generally his strongest issue, negative 8 on managing the federal government, negative 12 on the economy, also generally his strongest issue, negative 11 on trade, negative 14 on foreign conflicts, negative 21 on Russia-Ukraine, and negative 21 on the illegal deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. There is quite literally nothing he is doing that has garnered majority support in this country. In fact, more in-depth polling shows that only 6% of Americans think the president should be able to ignore Supreme Court rulings, and 10% think you should be able to deport American citizens to foreign prisons, both issues for which Trump has expressed support or is quite literally doing right now. Which probably explains why Trump's approval rating among independents has dropped to an anemic 29%. I guess the lesson we can take here is that when someone promises to lower costs on day one and instead sends them surging, and then wipes away 20% of your retirement savings, and then tries to wage war against Greenland, Panama, and Canada, voters tend not to love it. But all of that brings me to the next point. Chuck Grassley, the Republican senator from Iowa, took to Twitter today writing, "I've seen enough killing of innocent Ukrainian women and children. President Trump, please put the toughest of sanctions on Putin. You ought to see from clear evidence that he is playing America as a patsy." Isn't it interesting that a party that exists to pray at the altar of Trump suddenly begins to find its spine as soon as Trump's approval ratings begin to crater? I can assure you that last month, not a single Republican senator, certainly not Chuck Grassley, would have spoken out publicly against Trump. Now you've got Chuck Grassley publicly tweeting that under Trump's leadership, the U.S. is being played as a patsy at the hands of Russia. I know that this is only one piece of anecdotal evidence, but I think it signals that the dam is breaking and that these Republicans are beginning to rightfully recognize that Trump isn't the boom he frames himself as, but rather a massive liability. It's also worth noting that Grassley is right, although he clearly kept the criticism tame. It's not that Putin is playing America as a patsy, he is playing Trump as a patsy. That's the only person Putin's negotiating with. None of us are doing the negotiating, so if Putin's able to game America, it's simply that he's learned how to game Donald Trump. But hey, art of the deal. And that's beyond obvious, as noted here.
It's absurd. And this is what's so frustrating about this. I mean, Donald Trump never talks about the reality, which is that Russia is the aggressor, that Russia is attacking Ukrainian troops on Ukrainian territory as we speak and has been for 3 years now. I think, sort of the prospect of World War III that Trump would constantly conjure up was more, I think, the potential of a direct U.S.-Russia confrontation or Russian use of a nuclear weapon. And I think those are real things to worry about. But I think most kind of military experts would say that looking weak in the face of that kind of aggression from Russia is more likely to incentivize Putin to do more and to do worse than unity and strength from NATO countries, especially the United States.
I mean, clearly Trump wants to be part of the autocrat club, and Putin's in the autocrat club, and so we've just kind of relinquished our defense of democracies around the world. But is that really what he gets out of this? How does he stand to benefit from this?
I don't know, man. I mean, look, there is a very sort of dark fact that I think we all just have to face up to, which is that our president looks at Vladimir Putin, looks at Xi Jinping, and thinks, I like those guys. I like their systems. I share their values. I have more in common with them than I do with a lot of leaders in Europe or democratically elected Europe. And that is just a very weird, scary thing. And I think, the part of this is a campaign pledge. I do think that Donald Trump energized a lot of people who were fed up with the post 9/11 wars, the invasion of Iraq, the fact that we were, misled and lied into war, and ran on this kind of isolationist America first promise to end the war between Ukraine and Russia on one day. He had this Hail Mary attempt at the end to try to get some money out of the deal and extort some rare earth minerals from the Ukrainians. Right. But to your bigger question, I mean, what does he get out of this? It is hard to see. But, all the places my mind goes are pretty dark.
And it would be one thing if it was just the Russia-Ukraine war, which, by the way, Trump promised would end, quote, before he even got into the Oval Office.
I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president. And this is a war that has to end, and we're going to get that war ended. I'm going to try, and I think I can, get it ended as president-elect. In other words, before I even take over the White House. Got to stop the people from dying.
It's also that he failed on everything he's promised. Remember, this guy came into office promising to lower costs on day one.
I won on two things, the border, and more than immigration. You know, they like to say immigration. I break it down more to the border, but I won on the border, and I won on groceries. It's a very simple word, groceries. Like almost, you know, who uses the word? I started using the word, the groceries. When you buy apples, when you buy bacon, when you buy eggs, they would double and triple the price over a short period of time. And I won an election based on that. We're going to bring those prices way down.
And yet, far from lowering anything, costs have surged, inflation's rising, consumer confidence is falling, the market has crashed, we are likely in a recession right now, and all the while, Trump is engaging in straight fairy tales about how hundreds of countries are sprinting to the negotiating table.
I'm telling you, these countries are calling us up, kissing my ass. They are dying to make a deal. Please, please, sir, make a deal. I'll do anything. I'll do anything, sir.
On Monday, Beijing issued a new warning telling the world not to make new trade deals with the U.S. or the Chinese government will retaliate with reciprocal tariffs. It comes as China tries to get around the 145% tax on Chinese imports to the United States. At the same time, China is trying to form closer trade ties with its neighbors and the European Union. But the White House says its tariff policy is already working, and at least 15 countries have approached the U.S. looking to make a new deal.
A question on China. Can you clarify with whom the U.S. is speaking with China? They're saying it's fake news that trade talks are happening.
Well, they had a meeting this morning, so I can't tell you. It doesn't matter who they is.
New York Times reports this, quote, in private, some Trump officials concede that they did not accurately predict China's reaction. Trump seemed to expect China to be among the first to come begging for relief, given the size of its exports to the U.S.
We advocate for inclusive and beneficial economic globalization, oppose all forms of unilateralism and protectionism, and maintain that indiscriminate tariffs severely harm normal international trade.
So look, again, I want to be fair and not overstate Grassley's move, but I think the precedent is telling. Republicans are now feeling just a little bit more emboldened to criticize dear leader, and you all know what happens when one domino falls. So as Donald Trump's numbers continue to plummet, keep an eye on all those rats fleeing the sinking ship.